Okay, I'll hand it over to you.
All right, thank you, Connor. I want to introduce our speaker today. Her name is Dr. Laura Sicola. She's a leadership communication and influence expert and author of Speaking to Influence, Mastering Your Leadership Voice. She's founder of Vocal Impact Productions, and she is known for her coaching and live on-camera trainings. She's going to speak today about a lot of her tips and tricks for public speaking. And I would like to hand it over to her now, just to allow her to tell us a little bit more about herself, and we can get started. Thank you
Thank you. Yes. Hey, everybody. Thank you, Laura and Connor, for inviting me to be part of this conversation today. I really do want to invite everybody out there as you're joining to share about who you are and what your business is, the name of and the industry, of course. And just as we are having this conversation, to put your questions in the chat. Feel free to add little comments if you're somebody who likes to participate, likes to give feedback, etc. Feel free to type LOL if you want to laugh at my jokes. I am always willing to have somebody let me know when I'm actually funny. It always helps. But as opposed to waiting to the end for Q&A, let's just keep the dialogue going as organically as possible. As you mentioned, I am a leadership communication and influence coach. And if you want to sort of separate where my niche is from the broader executive coaching space and business development space, I'm not going to help you make one blessed business decision. But when you've made those decisions, I help you get the buy-in you need to get the results that you want. So that comes from working with leaders in any sort of organization, for-profit or nonprofit, whether they're CEOs who were or weren't originally the founders, CFOs, cybersecurity leads, tech leads, et cetera, can also be people who are on their way up and looking to have that next promotion to the leadership space, to the senior ranks. Maybe you're the most technically qualified, but something's missing. And it usually has to do with that executive presence, that ability to take the genius that you know is in your mind and the passion that you know is in your heart, and make sure that when you open your mouth, it's clear and evident to everybody else. Because, there's always that gap, right, between what you think you say and what they think they hear. And figuring out how to close that gap and make sure that the largest gap in the world is really the 3 inches between your brain and your mouth. Right. Yeah. We have those moments where we say something and then we immediately think that sounded better in my head. Right. So what is it that creates that gap, and how do we close it? And that's really my space, is how to make sure everybody else sees the genius and hears the passion that you have inside of you. So I end up doing that with larger organizations, as I mentioned, but also truckloads of pitch coaching, working with startup incubators, university business incubator programs, Temple University, I work with very frequently here in Philadelphia. I've worked with Dream It Ventures and a number of others. So I love doing the pitch coaching. That's always a lot of fun, and happy to answer any questions you've got today.
Excellent. Well, in addition to having the ability to reach out to you directly for specific advice, I was wondering if you could walk us a little bit through your 3 C's.
Absolutely. The 3 C's are at the cornerstone of everything that I teach, train, coach, et cetera. And it's very simply to have that presence, you need to be able to command the room, connect with the audience, and close the deal. So we'll walk those through one more time. Command the room, connect with the audience, and close the deal. So what does that mean? Commanding the room is that ability to captivate people's attention right away. Notice I said captivate, not capture. I do not want a captive audience. Most audiences are captives. They'd rather be anywhere else, and they're not allowed to leave. They're stuck. That's a captive audience. I want a captivated audience. A captivated audience has the ability and the freedom to leave. They choose to stay because they want to keep listening to you. You've got their attention. To connect with the audience is to somehow establish that mutual understanding that you understand me and I understand you. Doesn't matter where we come from in life, we've established that mutual understanding. And then closing the deal in your context may often be quite literal and wanting to get that yes to funding or a sale, but it really doesn't have to be exclusively limited to that. Closing the deal simply means getting to yes, agreement formation, moving the needle, coming to whatever we decide is going to be the next step with whoever your audience is. How do we say, yes, let's go here? That's closing the deal. If you could do all three, that's power.
So I found it very interesting. One of the things you were talking about of, getting a captive audience, not, capturing the audience. And we were speaking a lot to your end goal and what your objective is in these conversations. But I find in a lot of ways, it's really about that first impression, those first crucial seconds or minutes in order to captivate that audience. Can you speak a little bit more into, ways to succeed there, some things to avoid, and why it's so important?
Sure. What's most important, I think, as you mentioned, those first seconds, it's funny. There are image coaches that I have worked with, people who help you, clean up the outside, right? They help you get dressed. They work with you on your style, coaching, hair, makeup, all that kind of stuff. And they like to say that people make their first decisions, their first assumptions about you in the first 7 seconds of meeting you, because that's when they have a sort of a chance to look you over. And now it's probably less, since they're really only looking over this much, and it's only from here up more often than not. But for me, it's the next 7 seconds that count, because they've already made certain assumptions about you. And in those second 7 seconds, that's when you open your mouth. And that's when you're going to either prove those original assumptions right or wrong, for better or for worse. So really preparing that first minute or two, Connor, prior to the jumping on this call, we're talking about my 60 to 60 rule. And if nothing else, you need to nail that first minute of the conversation, the pitch, whatever it is, because if you're feeling a little nervous, how many people out there, when you have a really important conversation or a pitch or presentation, the butterflies kick in? And it's one thing to have butterflies. It's another to let them overtake the farm. We don't want the butterflies to run the show. A little bit of butterflies is good, because butterflies just means you're excited. Your body does not know the difference between nervous adrenaline and excited adrenaline. So don't talk yourself down that death spiral of, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous, because it just makes it worse. Remind yourself, I'm so excited. This is a great opportunity. I really want to make a difference. I really want to land this client or whoever it is. And rehearse that first minute, because if you walk in there with the first minute good to go, if you're like everybody else, chances are after a minute or two, the butterflies go away and you're kind of in your groove anyway. So just make sure that that first minute is solid, because what the 60 to 60 rule says is that it's in the first 60 seconds that you will set the audience's expectation for the value you're going to bring to the next 60 minutes of engagement. So if your first minute, you're a hot mess, tripping over yourself, lots of ums and uhs in your nose and kind of fidgety, and before you get into the groove, that first 60 seconds, they're going, oh boy, this is going to be a really long pitch, or it's going to be a really short one, because they're going to go, no thanks, delete, and make it super short, which is definitely not where you want to go. But if you set that first impression, like, I'm here, I've got it together, I know exactly the value I want to bring to you and to this conversation and to everybody else on the planet, and here's how we're going to get it done, excited to share it with you today. That's somebody that, all right, you got my attention, let's hear it. I'm looking forward to hearing it, because I believe there will be value in my time and in my experience in listening to you for the next 59 minutes or 19 minutes or however much time you've got for your pitch. So 60 to 60, get those first 60 seconds down pat.
That's a great rule. I wanted to jump in here. After you've gone through the first 60 seconds and you're getting into that groove of the conversation, a lot of times what we see is executives that they either are or are not reading the room, because you can start off going in one direction, and how do you manage or adjust your, how you perform, so to speak, to read the room?
So I'm curious, when you feel like people are not reading the room, what are some of the kinds of cues that people are not picking up on?
So it's interesting. One of the main things that we see is that someone will have a lot of information in their head, and it's this like nervous parade of words, let's say. So they're just talking endlessly, And what ends up happening is that in our world, when we're dealing a lot with investors, we like to let the investors control the conversation. So they're not sort of reading that investor is either wants to ask a question or has lost them or lost their interest. And so how do you adjust for that?
I just wanted to add too, I think it's mostly visual, right? It's avoiding this, maybe somebody's trying to open their mouth and ask a question, or, they're losing interest in their body language, whatever the case may be.
Is this virtual or is this in person, or both?
Well, we've had a lot of virtual incidents of these over the last 2 years, I'll say. So let's say virtual.
And are people typically on camera? Are they turning cameras off? Are they starting with cameras off? Everybody's on camera. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing a lot of eye contact being lost, assuming they're in a space where they can sort of look towards the camera. They're not on Teams or something where like everybody's down at the bottom and eye contact is almost impossible.
That's right.
Those are some of the frustrations.
They could be making eye contact, but it's almost like they're looking through the people and they're not really, there's not a connection there. You were talking about the connection with your audience, how important that is.
I think part of it, if you're on Zoom, you can also tell if people's eyes are moving all over the place, there's a very good chance that they're reading something. Well, I would hope it's your pitch or your proposal or whatever you've sent them, as opposed to, email or something else that once you've already completely lost their attention. But if you do see eyes moving around and they're not really focused on you, again, you probably have slides, in which case you're like a little thumbnail up top, I'm guessing. So when in doubt, I think it's really more a question of pausing on a more regular basis to make sure that you're not over explaining things. It is a very natural it's a very natural propensity to feel like if you're not connecting, there's a nervous scramble to feel like I didn't say it well enough. Let me try again. And then we end up repeating ourselves 2, 3, 4 times and going into that babble. It may be paraphrasing it may not be, but just that repetition. It's almost more like you're trying to convince yourself than them. And when you feel like you're on that runaway train, anybody ever feel like they're on that verbal runaway train and you're having this out of body experience and you're just watching yourself babble like mad, and the little voice above you who's hovering from that out of body experience is going, oh my God, stop talking. For the love of all that is holy, stop talking. And you just watch yourself keep on going. That's this worst feeling. And if you hear yourself, it is counterintuitive, but the best thing you can do at that moment is literally just cut yourself off and say, you know what? I don't want to repeat myself, which of course you've been doing, but nevertheless, and say, let me stop there. What questions can I answer so far? Or about this particular topic, is this clear? Or is there something I can answer? And ask for input, because at the very least, it will show that you have like reset your brain at least, and you have emotional intelligence and self-awareness to recognize, I need to pull back the reins. Let me regroup, as opposed to just continuing to babble like crazy. And let me tell you something, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Laura Connor, but emotional intelligence and self-awareness are two massively critical qualities in a founder worth investing in. What say you?
Absolutely. I mean, you can be the most on point with your numbers and your business, right? But a lot of times when investors are looking at companies, they're looking at who the people behind all of that is. And if those people aren't in tune with how to relate to, whether it's, investors or the people that they're speaking to on a day-to-day, it's going to be very hard to get buy-in and intrigue.
Yes. We talk a lot about, or investors that I've worked with over the years have talked a lot about the bet the jockey, not the horse perspective. It's great if you got a thoroughbred who is supposed to win, but you put an amateur jockey on that horse, they're not going to win the race. Who you may have the best business concept ever, but if you don't strike them as the person who's going to be able to turn that beautiful vision into reality, they're going to put their time, money, effort, resources, and connections somewhere else. So having that ability to show self-awareness, self-restraint, and back up. And here's something that can even help more, a little sense of humor to go along with it. You catch yourself on the babble train, cut yourself off, and you say, okay, you know what? Let me spare you a third repetition of what I think I've already said multiple times. Sorry about that. Let's go. And just to show a little bit of smile, that humility to own the mistake and to say, you know what, all right, enough of that. Let me, as opposed to being, oh my gosh, I repeated myself 3 times. Now you're going to hate me. You're never going to invest in me. I just want to leave meeting. Like don't just crumble under the pressure. Stop and own it. Do you have part of executive presence is grace under fire? Can you stand your ground and just show, you know what? Okay, I think I just repeated myself 3 times. Probably don't need a 4th. So let me stop there. A little bit of humor with the humility, but to say, I own it. And I'm okay with that. We don't need to make a big deal out of it, but go. Think of it this way. The orchestra in any Broadway play or opera or whatever else is only noticeable when they make a mistake. And so somebody hits a sour note, you suddenly notice, oh, that was a trumpet. Whereas previously you weren't paying attention to them at all. And you're only going to really notice the trumpet if the trumpet player stands up and goes, hey, that was me. Just letting you know, sorry. Why would you keep pointing that out? So stop just drawing more attention to the fact that you're crumbling with every passing second. Just stop. Keep playing. The audience will forget as long as you stop reminding them. So own it, confidently move on. That confident humility, I think, is a phenomenally important founder quality, investable founder quality.
This reminds me of a concept that we talked about with trust, because we have some founders that investors come across and, we've done all of our due diligence and we love what they do, but for some reason, the investor just gets this uneasy feeling and says that I can't invest because I don't trust. And can you talk about when that happens, why that happens, and how to avoid that?
There's a lot of different reasons why trust may or may not be there in the gut feeling. So let me frame it this way. If everybody out there thinks about, okay, you're pitching to a panel of private equity investors, venture capital, angel investors, whoever it is, what are the top 3 qualities that you want them to see in you? I'd love it if people in the chat could put in qualities, personal qualities that you want the investors to recognize in you as a founder. And by the way, no cheating, only one of those qualities can be a synonym for smart. Everybody likes to put in, well, I want you to see me as smart and intelligent and knowledgeable. I have a thesaurus too. Find something else. What else? What other qualities do you want people to see? Good. Relatable is a great one. What else? And feel free to just unmute if you don't want to put in the chat. Just unmute and blurt. I'm fine with that. Dependable. Okay.
Coachable is one.
Coachable. Love it. What else?
Humble.
Takes a few seconds. All right. I see Miss Ayel trying like mad to try to find something, way to type something in. Feel free to unmute yourself and just share. Competent. All right. How about things
like EQ type things?
Yeah. Well, let's see. And feel free to give a thumbs up if it's easier. But how about qualities like teachable? Yep. It goes along with coachable, like Laura mentioned. How about things like confident or passionate?
It's funny, the confident one, because it seems like everybody used very, I don't want to use the word bland, but like very simple words, right? And nobody had the confidence to say confidence.
And it's what I find tends to happen is a lot of these words like, relatable, dependable, and relatable certainly is important, and they all are. But ask yourself if everybody had a mental list of 3 to 5 qualities, how many of those qualities are top qualities of the person that you want to have on the team, but secondary qualities of the person you want to have leading the team? So what are the leadership qualities, like dependability and competence on the overall? Sure, we certainly want leaders to have those, but how many of the higher level qualities that, it's one thing, I want the guy who's executing to be dependable and reliable and competent at the tasks. What about the big picture? Where's the vision? Where's the confidence? Where's the authority? All those pieces. But regardless, trustworthiness, all those. Where I'm going with this is, when you think about whatever those qualities are, high, medium, low, ask yourself, what do they look and sound like? Because all of them are subjective interpretations of objective behaviors. I'm going to say that again. All those qualities, dependability, trustworthiness, confidence, passionate, compassionate, empathetic, patient, fun, strong, whatever quality it is, they're all subjective interpretations of objective behaviors. So just like beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so are all of those qualities. I mean, think about it. If somebody walked into a pitch and said, "Hi, I'm Laura Sicola, and I'm the founder of Vocal Impact Productions, and I want you to know that I am reliable, I am confident, and I am passionate." But I mean, what's your initial thoughts going to be? Okay, prove it, or
Right.
I'll be the judge of that.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So it's one thing to claim those kinds of things. It's almost like walking and saying, "Hey, I just want you to know I'm really funny." Oh, okay. I have no evidence of this whatsoever, other than the fact that I'm kind of laughing at you for saying that. I don't know if that counts, but what is it about the way that you speak that helps people in their gut? Because people don't listen with their guts, right? That's not actually a body part that has listening skills, but it is a part that has a feeling to it that makes them get the sense in that 20-minute pitch or whatever it is that you seem to be someone who is relatable, dependable, trustworthy, confident, passionate, etc. And it is in the alignment of three key things that will or won't establish that sense in someone's gut. And it's the words that you use, the sound of your voice as you're uttering those words, and their body language. So the verbal, vocal, and visual channels of communication, what you say, how you sound, and how you look as you're saying it. Now, we've all heard generic expressions out there like, well, it's not what you say, it's how you say it that matters. False. It is the connection, it's the alignment or the congruence between what you say and how you say it. And if they seem to match, that's what matters. If you only have great content, but your delivery is a hot mess, you're tripping over yourself, you're using lots of fillers, you're sounding like you're asking questions over and over when you're talking because you're really not sure, and that's seeping through with a lot of implied rights and knows and okays. That doesn't say confident. That says, I need you to validate me. So could you please tell me I'm right? That puts you in the power seat, not me. So your content might be accurate, but your delivery is a hot mess. That's not good. But equally, if you have great delivery, you sound confident, you sound charismatic, and you're fun and you're interesting and you're solid, but you're listening and you're like, you don't have any idea what you're talking about, do you? It's like a lot of smoke and mirrors, but you don't know your numbers. You don't have data. You don't have an actual prototype ready to go. You like to talk and you're kind of interesting, but the first is dipping a pearl in mud. There's good stuff in there. You just can't find it. The second is putting lipstick on a pig. It might be momentarily interesting to some, but then you realize there's really no value in it and it's kind of cruel on top of it. So where's the value? If you don't have the alignment between your words, your voice, and your body language, it immediately erodes all of those qualities. And just by way of example, if I were to have introduced myself and said to you, yeah, so I'm Dr. Laura Sicola and my company is Vocal Impact Productions. I do executive coaching for senior executives at Fortune 100 companies. My TED Talk has almost 7 million views, and I used to be a professor at University of Pennsylvania. I taught grad classes there. Get where I'm going with this? Like everything I said, content-wise, was true. What I said, all solid. Do you care?
Right, but your body language and your voice, yeah, we're totally misaligned.
Yeah. So your brain is like, I'm getting mixed signals and I kind of don't know what to do with this because I heard what you said and I don't know why you would lie to my face about all that. But at the same time, given how you just delivered it, I don't really understand how any of it can be true. So what am I missing? something doesn't make sense. If something doesn't make sense, that means I don't trust myself with you. I don't trust the communication. We're not going to understand each other. I'm out. Right. So that undermines your credibility, your trustworthiness, your perception of confidence. All that stuff is in the eye and the ears of the beholder, of the audience. And you blew it because you weren't in alignment with what you said and how you say it. So how's that?
To overcome the alignment, it seems to me that practice would be essential, because you have so much going on in your brain here, and just trying to tie in everything. And if you just rehearse it, the flow will be a lot easier, I would think.
Yes. And so a couple of things, and Kate, I appreciate your comments and questions in the chat. As far as humor is concerned, there's two things to be mindful of, and these connect with yours as well, Laura. Number one, if you are not naturally funny, please do not force it. You are not looking for trying to be on some stand-up whatever show it is. Yeah, definitely don't go for that, because there's nothing less authentic than someone trying to be funny, and nothing less painful than somebody who's trying to be funny and isn't. But to just have a self-deprecating humor, as long as it doesn't come across as utterly self-effacing shame just seeping through, then have a little smile, like I mentioned before. Just you catch yourself babbling and just say, you know what, you probably don't need me to say this a fourth time, so I'm just going to cut myself off there. What questions do you have? That just a little bit of smile, and just somebody in the world thinks you're funny. Somebody out there, whether it's your grandmother or your significant other or whoever it is, you can be yourself and loosen up and make a little dry comment here and there that they appreciate. You can do that more. I mean, being appropriate and whatever for the context, that's enough. You don't need to be funny. Just allow people to see that you do possess a sense of humor. You take your content seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. That's a very fine line of demarcation. And if you can just stay this side of it, that's great, because they still want to know that you absolutely take your company seriously. I mean, look, we've been on this call for the last half hour or so. I've cracked X number of jokes. I've been a little goofy in some of my demonstrations and things to make a point. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it has reinforced your trust in my competence and what I teach, and hasn't undermined my authority in your eyes, Laura and Connor versus anybody else out there. Nobody's logged off yet, so I'm taking that as a good sign. But it helps to connect, and we could talk about humor more if you'd like. But
Great.
for everybody's knowledge out there, if you can work in just a little bit, when you make someone smile or laugh. I mean, I mentioned at the very beginning, how many people have had those moments where you're talking and you suddenly hear yourself say something and you go, that sounded better in my head. Right? And then everybody at the very least kind of gets a little smile on their face, that little sheepish, oh yeah, okay, guilty as charged. Just that little smile. When you make someone smile or laugh, there's a little dopamine hit that happens. And dopamine is the happy addiction drug of sorts that makes your brain go, ooh, I like that. I want more. Could you give me more? I think you can give me more, I'm going to pay attention to you more, because I'm expecting more good stuff to come from you. So dopamine opens listening. If you can sprinkle just a little here and there, just a little of your personality, it wakes people up from I am now going to be another human spreadsheet talking through my financials and telling about my projections and about the mechanics of how we're going to produce this thing. Yeah, watch people's eyes glaze over, no matter how accurate and important it is. A little bit of personality goes a long way.
Yeah, and that helps your passion shine through too.
Yes.
Just being yourself, and being passionate about what it is that you are doing.
Yes.
Connor, do you have? I interrupted you a couple times. Sorry, so I'll let you.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you were providing about trying to add in a little bit of comedy here is great, but just more generally speaking to when you're public speaking, and sort of some secrets or things that you tell people on how to be confident when they're in that position, whether it's speaking to investors, speaking in front of their, company or management team, or just doing any sort of event?
Yes. So in a second, I'm going to give my 4-word secret to confident public speaking. And I'm putting a pin in that for a moment because I'm going to frame it with something I realized I did not address in Laura's previous question, which was about the practice piece. And there's no better tool that you can use than the video camera. You have to video record yourself, whether it's the first minute or the whole thing. There is nothing that will close the gap and show you where your blind spots are. And we all have them. Make no mistake about it. We all have blind spots between what we think we are saying and what we mean to say, how we mean to come across versus how we actually come across. That gap is your blind spot. And the video camera will disabuse you of that instantaneously. The video camera is your best friend who has no filter and will tell you exactly what you need to hear, whether or not you want to hear it. They will tell you that shirt does not look good on you. They will tell you, you sound like a babbling fool. They will tell you, well, that's the video camera. Whatever it is, it shows you exactly where you need to close that gap. So record yourself on your phone, on Zoom, on whatever it is, and watch it. You're allowed to assume the position when you watch the video, which is this. That's totally okay. You can bring popcorn. If it's a horror movie versus whatever else, doesn't matter, but watch. And what you will learn is that you never have to learn to love it. Look, I am on camera so often I can't stand my own face by the end of the day. And when I'm doing, virtual conferences or whatever else, I will go back when I have a copy of the recording to watch bits and pieces of it to see what I did well, what I didn't, because it's the only way to stay at the top of my game. This is what I do for a living. I have to be sure that I'm always sharp and that my gap, my blind spot is as small as possible. You got to do it. I never learned to love watching myself on video, but that's not the point. I'm not trying to learn to love it. I appreciate the value that there is no tool more powerful for helping me be a master at my craft. And if you want to become a master at public speaking, you have to watch yourself do it objectively, third party, like from the recording, when your brain isn't half trying to pay attention to what's actually happening and half, or really like 98%, trying to figure out just what to say next. You cannot multitask that way. There is no objectivity in the moment that you're speaking. So record it, then exhale, sit back, assume the position, hit play, and then watch objectively to see what really happened. How did the rest of the world experience you? It is the only way to get better, especially at that speed.
And then see constant improvement. Just keep over and over and over again.
Yes.
Every time you speak, you learn something new about how effective you are, and you can be more effective and influential.
Yes. Yes. And frankly, when you watched yourself on video the first time, you'll probably identify 75 things you wish you had done differently. But you know what? Pick one. Don't try to reinvent the universe all at the same time. Pick one item that you're going to improve the next time around. Maybe you're going to tell a story more concisely. Maybe you're going to have better posture, or remember to smile as you're talking about your pitch, or have fewer fillers along the way, the ums and uhs and likes and you knows, and try not to start every sentence with so, or whatever is your filler of choice. And so from there, I'm going to segue to Connor's question about the confidence piece in public speaking. When you're getting better at, or as you practice, let me put it that way, as you're practicing in your video camera, the best piece of advice I can give you is to remember the 4-word secret for confident public speaking, which is very simply, it's not about you. I don't care if it's your company. I don't care if you're pitching for a couple of $1 million worth of seed funding or whatever it is. It is not about you. It is about them. You are there to serve your audience in that moment, and you are there to serve your customers in the big picture. That's why you are building this company. So when you step up and you think to yourself, if I were in that audience, who would I want to see speak to me? What would I want to feel from them? How would they connect with me? The audience is there. All audiences are completely self-interested, by the way. They're all looking at it. They're listening to the same radio station. They're tuned into WIFM. What's in it for me? That's it. So they want to know, okay, am I going to connect with this person? Am I going to be interested in what they have to say? Am I going to like them? Am I going to feel like there's real potential here? Okay. Serve the audience. Tell the story for the audience. Be present for the audience. Give them that experience, and don't sit there and worry. Nobody is walking in. I mean, how many of you think of it this way? You just logged in today. You came because you know, like, and trust Laura and Connor after however many times you've connected, or maybe this is the first time you've had a chance to join because you like the topic that we were going to talk about. This is your first time hearing me for most of you. How many of you came in with the expectation of, okay, let me find my red pen in here someplace, and I'm just going to sit here and listen, and I'm going to take tally and give her a ding every time she says, or every time she asks a question, every time she makes a statement that I don't totally agree with, I'm going to write something down and send her a nasty message and tell her she's stupid. Anybody come in there with that expectation? I doubt it. I'm guessing, and do a little mind reading here. You can tell me if I'm right or wrong. Everybody who joined with one sole focus in mind. Boy, I hope I get something useful out of this. Boy, I hope this is a good experience. Boy, I hope I learn something that helps make me better through this experience. Is this going to be a good use of my time? That's what you're all thinking. And hopefully we're delivering that, but that's exactly what your investors are thinking. That's exactly what your clients are thinking. So you have one and only one job as the speaker, is to deliver value to the audience, to give the audience a good experience and answer their one and only question: what's in it for me? It's not about you. I don't care if it's your company and how much money you're looking for. It's not about you.
I think that idea of like humility and not putting yourself in front of the message is so important. The second you put the thing out there, it immediately reminded of, I had a teacher back in school who, anytime you used to say she'd cut you off immediately and move on to the next one. So that was a little bit of PTSD for me, but it was good to hear
Yes.
about.
My third grade teacher used to, every time you used one of those fillers, she'd go, sort of, kind of like, sort of, kind of like, sort of, kind of like. And the other one would go like, which is really annoying, but it worked.
It works, right?
Yes.
Yeah. After a while, I did want to ask you about, because I think something that I have a hard time thinking about when I'm doing public speaking or anything like this is my tone and inflection. You know, I'm so focused on, all right, how do I look? How's my body language? What am I saying? But going back to that, how I'm saying it, do you have any, pieces of advice or things that people can think about so that, their tone and the way that they are delivering doesn't get lost in everything that's going on in their mind when they're trying to speak to influence?
Again, the recording is the best tool you can use, because most people think they're modulating their voice a lot more than they actually are. Especially when you're uber focused on, I just have to remember the content. There's so many things, all the statistics and all the numbers. And I don't want to forget. I don't want to say it wrong, that your personality drains. When you find yourself looking up at the ceiling as if you've got a script written up there, that's your brain going, I don't want to forget. What was I going to say next? There's something up there. And as soon as that happens, you're no longer present to your own words, to your own story. You're not connecting with the audience. So you have to reconnect with them. And just know that more often than not, unless you are a hyper extrovert, which, hey, welcome to the club. Most people's modulation ends up being less in those nervous, there's a lot at stake in this moment kind of presentations. So you can probably stand to expand your range a lot more than you already are. And in the moment that you're doing it, you may feel like you're being really ridiculous and how much you're stretching things, but what you'll realize when you watch the video is it didn't sound like that at all. It just felt like that in the moment. Adrenaline is a dangerous little drug, because it skews your perception of your own performance in the moment. It skews your perception of silence and time. It skews your perception of how fast you're talking. It skews your perception of how much you're modulating your voice and how many fillers you use. It skews your perception of all sorts of stuff. So just know that when you're speaking with all that adrenaline kicking in, it's kind of like driving under the influence. You're speaking under the influence. Your perception is off. So to be able to slow yourself down and trust that, in particular, Connor, with regard to that vocal modulation, intonation, which is the melody of your speech, the movement between pitches, especially if you're somebody, and especially for the guys who tend to have much lower, kind of gravelier voices, you're going to feel like any little stretch is really way outside of your comfort zone, but it's not. But you really need to think about what's the most important words that you want people to focus on. And when you want them to capture those words in their ears and have it stick in their brains, you have to punch those words a lot more. Now, of course, I'm over dramatizing it, but when you do it, you will feel like you're over dramatizing those words. But then when you go and watch it, realize it was not. It really just, you'll be shocked because you'll listen, or you'll think you're doing it like, oh, this should be enough. Okay, now I'm stretching out, and you listen to it and you're going, total flatline in the voice. So you have to record yourself, even if you don't use video, just use audio recording in the voice memo app or something to see, does it sound like what I expected it to sound like? If I didn't know that person from Adam or from Eve, excuse me, would I think that that person sounded passionate? Start with that. Yes, Xing. Hi.
Hey, sorry to jump in late.
No, jump in.
So I'm very interested in this topic. Part of it because quite a few parallel things happening. So coming from Asia, I've been here for like more than 30 years. So the recently actually been dabbling in this thing is, from the Asian culture, Asian people will. First of all, I think the confidence comes with experience. We're always confident in certain things, not necessarily some other things. For the things that I'm familiar with, of course, I'm confident. But I'm the kind of person like to, I think it's part of the woman and a part of maybe the more cultural is that for the topics, I will, I like to study the topics before I speak, right? Sure. And then, so there's but then there's this perceived, I think recently I heard quite a few comments. The Asian people would think that I'm very confident. And then the US people thinking that sometimes I may be, not too confident. So this perceived confidence that I'm actually puzzled about at this point. Based on the recent the feedback, and I think, I don't really like your definition of confidence because I like to be who I am, and I like to be the real me, and then some kind of a fake confidence, even though you don't really understand, but you appear to be so knowledgeable. It's actually sometimes I despise that, So I'm wondering, I don't know whether it's the right. What's your feedback? What's your, view about that?
Thank you for asking that. That's so important. And it's really critical that everybody is clear on the fact that I am never going to encourage anyone to be fake. I'm not going to try to make you be someone else. I only want you to be your authentic self. In order to do that effectively, I also want to perhaps correct one little detail that I heard you say, which is that I don't want to be more this or that. I just want to be me. The idea of just being yourself, you are not finite. You are not just like, this is my box. This is your box. I don't want to come out of my box. I will never grow outside of my box. I mean, 20 years ago, I was not the founder of a company. I wasn't a mother. I wasn't a professor. I wasn't, all those things. That wasn't me. But I'm certainly willing to grow in my identity, to expand my identity, to be able to incorporate all of those other components and to learn how to do them all well. I'm not going to be good at all of them right away. Motherhood, there's a constant stretch about trying to do it better and better, right? So the idea is that as you expand that sense of identity, you may have to learn to communicate in different ways to get through to the audience in those spaces. I mean, I was a professor for a number of years, getting my PhD. I had to learn to speak and write like an academic. And that took a decade for them to beat that into my head, how to use that kind of language. Then when I started doing corporate consulting, that was not working. They're like, we would like you to use words that don't always have 4 syllables or more in them. They're really unnecessary and incredibly boring to listen to, Laura. You're losing our attention. So everything that they had spent 10 years beating into my head, somebody else was spending another 10 years beating out of my head. And it's not that it was me or not me, authentic or fake. It was just recognizing this audience needs me to use more of that technical jargon language, and this audience does not. So I can turn it on and turn it off and have both of those styles be me, but recognize that I can, just like I'm going to change my clothes. You know, I own my business casual attire. I own sweats. I went running this morning because I'm insane. It was 18 degrees out. I will not do that again. And I own black tie, you know, nice formal dresses and suits and those kinds of things. But I know I'm not going to wear the dress when I go running, right? You have to adjust your dress and you adjust your voice for the audience and still have it be you, because it's all part of your verbal and vocal and visual wardrobe. If you look in my book, it's what I call your prismatic voice. And it's not black and white, but the same way that when light passes through a prism, a little glass piece, you know, on your window or something, and you see the rainbow come out the other side, maybe land on the sofa or on the wall. The same way that that white light has all of those colors inside of it, you are that white light. And inside of you are all those colors of the spectrum. Maybe I'll call my mommy voice my red, and I'll call my business voice, my pitching here, my coaching, teaching voice, I'll call that my green, and I'll call my something else my blue. And I just know that all those colors are inside me. But for you here in this space today, it's best if my green shines brightest. I'm not abandoning my red. It's just, it wouldn't really be appropriate if I talked to you in my mommy voice, right? It wouldn't quite fit. So I'm not being inauthentic. I'm just showing you the part of me that you will relate to best. When we go to those 3 C's again, to command the room, connect with the audience, close the deal, that connection and that commanding will definitely be better if it shows up a little more green than red. So as far as confidence is concerned, Sheng, for one audience, being able to be a lot more declarative in your tone, having a stronger voice, more this or more that, may be the right color of confidence, as opposed to when you're with your family or when you're with strictly a group of Chinese or other counterparts who are from your same home location, share those original cultural values. You're going to adjust for them. It shouldn't be about me, not me. It's what color is it from your spectrum? Does that help?
Yeah, very much so. There's you probably all remember the conference, big conferences. Sometimes people, you know, they hire an actor to talk about your product, right? Those actors knows nothing about your product, how your product works, but they can speak very fluently and very confidently as if they were the product marketing people, right? So
But it's not their words. You're giving them the script.
Yes, I understand, but they can, I don't know, they memorize it or they have a voiceover thing in their headset. I have no idea, but somehow they just can communicate. I always admire that, you know, so I'm not saying I will be like that, but it's interesting. You know, when recently I gave a speech and then behind the scene, I asked 3 different people. One is from Europe, one's from Asia, and one's from the United States. And I got 3 different results, right? So, and then in the Asian standpoint, I sometimes say, oh, I apologize. I'm so used to it. It's just like there's he or she. If you ask Chinese people, they always mix it. I mean, because we have one word, one pronunciation for those words. But in the United States, you have he and she. So we always come and say, okay, I'm sorry. And it's very, very used to. But then there are certain things that, you know, the European people, I feel like maybe they're more accepting. And then on the United States side, why do you start with I'm sorry? You know, so there's certain things it's hard to fix. You know, yeah. Go ahead. No worry. It helps.
Yeah, and so adjust from context to context. It's all you. It's just about what part of you is going to resonate with them.
Yeah, that's great. And I know we've actually run a little bit over on time, so I don't want to keep you, Dr. Sicola, any longer than we have already. But I want to thank you so much for joining us today, and we've really appreciated this conversation. I have dropped into the link a link to our community where you can come in, you can ask any follow-up questions. We'll be happy to answer those there and continue this conversation further. But thank you very much for joining us today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you so much, everyone. And the recording will be available there some point soon. So thank you, Dr. Sicola. We really appreciate your time. And thanks everyone for joining us.